I don't know about you. I didn't expect that we would not be having church for such an extended period. And I would have to say, like many of you that I have had opportunity to have conversations with, it's kind of enough already. Like when is this going to be over? And I have paperwork and phone calls and Zoom meetings about things that I never would have expected. Guidelines for reopening your church and what to do with at-risk individuals who are more at risk and what they should do during the season and how to exercise best sanitation practices and discouraging having Sunday school classes and not having church bulletins that we would pass around, and that when we celebrate communion, that we would be careful not to pass a communal bowl, and that we do not pass offering plates. And so, here are the guidelines for reopening the church. And that's kind of interesting, but I have to confess, I'm asking myself the question, not how, but when. When do we get to? Well, I know that the impact for many of you is very diverse. And some of you are doing okay. And some of you, it becomes increasingly more and more difficult. And the financial ramifications, the job, whether the job will still be there, how long the cash reserves will last. In some cases, family life is struggling through this season. And it kind of lends itself to a little bit of a season of feeling out of control. Well, I was reflecting, and it's been a little over a year ago that we spent some time in the book of 1 Samuel. And we were just spending some time examining the prophet Samuel and his life. And his story certainly gives us a lot of examples of periods of time and seasons when things are out of control. His story literally opens with his mom and dad, Elkanah and Hannah. And they are people who are faithful to the Lord, but in spite of their faithfulness, Hannah is not able to have children. And one of the greatest desires of her heart is to be able to have a son who could carry on the family name for she and her husband Elkanah. And the years go by, and she is broken. There is embarrassment. There is shame in this culture that is part of not being able to bear children. And one of the things that Hannah does, I think, really is an important thing for us to consider, because we read in the opening chapter of 1 Samuel that Hannah is faithful. She is faithful in prayer. And they go to make their trips regularly to the place of worship. And the story opens with Hannah there on her knees before the Lord. And she is so broken that literally the priest thinks that she may be drunk. And we see Hannah responding here, and she's saying to this priest at the Lord's house, "Not so, my Lord, not so. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I've not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. I just was opening up my heart to the Lord. Do not take me to be a wicked woman. I've been praying here. I've been talking to the Lord out of my great anguish and grief." Sometimes that's the greatest and the most important thing that we can do when things in our world are out of our control. Well, Eli the priest simply answered her and told her, "Go in peace." And then he says, "May the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Well, it would be typical for us to think, end of story. God's going to give her what she asked. Well, he does, but it kind of has some interesting twists because Hannah in her old age, she does become pregnant and she does have a son. And she promises the Lord that she will give this son back to him. What that means is not simply, Lord, he's going to grow up with us and in our home and we will raise him just like anyone else would do. But when she says that she's going to give him back to the Lord, she means that literally this little boy, when he is born, he will be named Samuel, and that he will be raised in God's house with the priest, with God's servants, and that he will spend his whole life there, not at home with Hannah and Elkanah. Well, there's an interesting thing that develops here that I think gives us a second consideration, not only to bring things to the Lord in prayer when things seem out of our control, but man, one of the really incredible things that really has spoke to my heart in this season is that what predominates Samuel's life more than anything else is faithfulness. We will read in the 7th chapter of 1 Samuel, it tells us there that Samuel continued. This little boy would grow up, he would continue as Israel's leader all the days of his life. And it continues on and says that Samuel, from year to year, literally year after year after year, that he went on a circuit from Bethel to Gilgal to Mizpah as a judge, judging Israel in all of those places. And in the next verse we read, he always went back to Ramah, where his home was, and there he also held court for Israel. And verses later, we read these words, when Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. In other words, when Samuel grew old, where did his life go? What happened to his life? Well, his life was occupied by year after year, from Bethel to Gilgal to Mizpah, from Bethel to Gilgal to Mizpah, on a circuit, day after day, week after week, year after year, of simply being faithful. Well, sometimes faithfulness is boring. And sometimes faithfulness does not fulfill our need for the next big thing. And sometimes faithfulness is kind of invisible to the people around us. But I want to suggest to you that Samuel is one of the great, great men of God. His story is one of the great stories in God's Word. And the heart of his story is born in prayer, taking out of control times and places and circumstances and simply presenting them to the Lord, submitting them to his control, and then remaining faithful. I wish that we were able to be together this morning. But I'm so thankful for your faithfulness. Faithfulness that's represented itself in a variety of ways. We're talking to people every day, people that we would not normally maybe have talked to. But they're taking the time, and we're taking the time. And we hear that you are taking the time. Groceries being delivered, dropped off on people's doorsteps, lawns being mowed, leaves being raked, cards being sent. And my goodness, here at the church office, daily we go to the mailbox and find your checks, your tithes and offerings and gifts that have enabled the church to continue to function in a meaningful way. And I just have to say thank you. Thank you, not for your money, but thank you for your faithfulness. God needs our faithfulness. And you know what's really wonderful is that though sometimes not glamorous, sometimes boring, sometimes tedious, faithfulness as a father, as a mother, faithfulness as a husband, faithfulness as a neighbor, faithfulness as a family of faith. I think faithfulness is one of the greatest characteristics that we could be remembered for as people of faith and followers of the Christ. And so today, I just pray. I pray that when you do not know what to do, that you will, number one, take those circumstances to the Lord in prayer. And number two, remain faithful, because faithfulness does matter. May God bless and encourage and sustain you in this season of difficulty. I can tell you today, with enthusiasm and optimism, I am looking forward to what is happening, to the plans that are being made, to the next season, as we do come back together again as a family of faith, that we will not come back together wounded and broken, but that we will come back together in joy, with encouragement, with the inspiration of knowing that we serve a God, who is faithful and will enable us to be found faithful as well.